last week, running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Welcome to another episode of Without a Country. Sorry, I want to move where this microphone is so it's closer to me because I'm a short lady. People forget how short I am. It's pretty crazy. Okay, here we go. I think this is kind of good enough. I want to get everything really close together. If I could use a booster seat from a Bennigan's type restaurant every day of my life, I absolutely would. No qualms about it. The mayor can sit in a booster seat. Anyway, okay, so cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows. Again, this is Without a Country. I'm Corinne Fisher. If you're just joining us, I'm guessing you probably know all that. We're recording live on YouTube right now. If you're watching the show on a later date, know that every Wednesday around 9 p.m., 9:30, we go live on YouTube, and we do this show, and you can call in live at the number that is pinned in the chat. All you have to do to participate in the chat is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's all I ask. That is free, but I feel like there has to be some type of thing that you're doing if you want to chat. Go Knicks. Last night wasn't our best work, but at least it was a good game. The playoffs bringing me a lot of joy right now, and I need it. So if you are completely new to the show, I am running for mayor of New York City, and cat's out of the bag. The Board of Elections is trying to fuck me over. I hadn't been talking about this because I just had to really figure out the case. And, I wasn't, I do like to cause problems and make people mad when they deserve it. But I really wanted to, not get it so out of hand that I was taunting the entire, New York County Supreme Court. So I just revealed yesterday everything that has been going on and why I've been a little bit, more quiet with fundraising the past 2 weeks. My enemy of the state this week is going to be the New York City Board of Elections. And I'll tell you why in short. If you want to see the videos that I've put up about it so far, you can head over to Corinne Fisher for Mayor over on Instagram. But what's happened is you were with us during the whole time when we were collecting signatures from registered Democrats for the petitions. You needed 3,750. We got thousands more than the requirement, so our substance was there. What you have to do is you have to submit all your volumes with a cover sheet. And it's not like just they have a template for a cover sheet and all the information is readily available that you need to put on the cover sheet. Of course, that would be way too simple for the New York City Board of Elections. What you need to do is you need to first retain a lawyer. And I had done that. I had been advised by many people that I was going to, want to retain an election lawyer at the start of the petitioning process, which I did. But even that was no easy feat. I was having trouble finding an election lawyer who would work with me because even that part of the process is politicized. A lot of the lawyers will not work with smaller candidates because they don't want to, ruin their possible future relationship with larger candidates. They don't want the retaliation that often happens in politics, and especially in the corrupt New York City politics. And so I ended up going with a New Jersey-based election firm who also has offices in New York City, but obviously, the more inside baseball, the better. And what happens is, there is a template of the cover sheet that you need to submit your petitions with your petitions. But some of the questions are a little vague on the cover sheet. They have to do with just numerical, amounts of things. And they ask it in such a way that it can be interpreted multiple ways. And so you have to give it to your lawyer. Your lawyer then reads the law, which is vague, and interprets it to the best of their knowledge. And my team interpreted a singular number in a way that was incongruent with the thoughts of the New York City Board of Elections with their statutes. And so that was incorrect. That being said, it is the policy of the New York City Board of Elections that we are able to fix, aka in their language, cure petitions of any clerical errors of that matter. Anything like that. Like I can't add signatures or anything later, but I can cure things. And you have 3 business days after receipt of the notice to cure. We received one notice in the mail regarding a page numbering thing. Like most of our pages were legal size, and there was one like 8x10 page in a particular volume that just slipped by one of my staff, and so it was not numbered. It has to be numbered 1 through whatever is in that volume. And so that was our fault, but we were alerted to that. And we went and we fixed it. And even if we had not fixed it and that entire volume had to be tossed, that would have only been like 200 signatures. So we could have done without that. That complete volume could have been trashed and we would have been fine. We had so much padding because we worked to have that padding in case there were problems with any of the volumes. And then so after that, we never received the notice about the defect on the cover sheet. And then all of a sudden, it was there was like information uploaded to this like communal ledger for all the candidates that I was knocked off the ballot. And so I like hear about it from actually a reporter because the reporters are stalking it because that's just like they're like salivating at the mouth for people to get knocked off. So this reporter at Politico was actually the one who I found out from because he was just like clicking refresh, I guess. And he goes, "Hey, like, were you knocked off the ballot? Is it a fatal defect? Can you fix it?" And so I am, thankful that he was, salivating, at the thought of bad news and informed me immediately because obviously I wasn't sitting at the ledger nonstop. Do you have a question, Michael?
Oh, Politico? Mm-hmm. First on the scene about some gossip? Couldn't be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went off on them last week, because they wrote that, such a cunty thing about me. Whatever, I don't even care anymore. And so they, and so my team immediately went on it. We figured out what was happening. My campaign manager immediately went to the Board of Elections and was like, "What are you talking about? Like, we never got such a notice." They printed out this notice that they sent to us in air quotes. I'm doing if you're not watching the live version. They could not give us a tracking number for this notice. It was just like basically like their word against ours, which is crazy when you think about it. And I know you're thinking like, oh, we're doing this in like hard copies of notices, even though it's in 2025. Yes, we're doing it in hard copies. It's not email, like a normal person or a telephone call. Like, basically it should be the way you have to, serve someone when you're trying to get a divorce or something. It should, with all the money that's going into these New York City elections, there should be some kind of guarantee that the person received the notice. Like that would be fair. And again, it is within the Board of Elections' own rules that you have to be notified by them. I also find it weird that we miraculously received, and it, at the same address, the non-fatal defect, but we never received the one that would take us off the ballot. Because first of all, both the defects should have been listed on the same notice. Why were they broken up? It's from the same submission. That doesn't even make any sense. And then number 2, of course, like the minor one we received, and then the huge one we didn't receive. Okay. So, we contacted our attorneys that we already had, on retainer. And, we went to court. We went to the New York County Supreme Court. That was last Tuesday, April 22nd. And we are currently still in a legal process, and I have to go back to court next week, I believe early next week. So I'll keep you all posted. And additionally, I talked a little bit about them like losing the petitions. And first of all, I want to say we scanned all the petitions before we submitted them. We're not idiots. I was like, and my campaign, staff was like, "Why are we, scanning all this?" And I was like, "We're scanning all of this. We're scanning all of this. First of all, everyone's getting paid." So I was like, "We're scanning all of this." I was like, we did not put a month and a half into getting signatures all over this city to not scan our work. I was like, I don't trust these people one little bit. So we have everything scanned, but you have to get copies from the Board of Elections of your work to submit any cured petitions. So you have to request your petitions back, copies of them, and you have to pay for them in cash. So we asked for copies of the petitions, which again, you need if you are going to cure and resubmit, which we have the ability to do. They made a huge thing about us asking for it. They're like, that's 1,000 pages. I'm like, okay. Like, for a lot of candidates have over 1,000 pages of, signatures. And again, there's a bunch of signatures per page. So I'm like, and also I'm like, this is your rules. Like, yeah, like it's weird that you have to copy them by hand. You should just have a printer. But again, I don't run the Board of Elections, but I have to follow your rules. So at first, they can't even find the petitions. And there's, in every borough, there's a Board of Elections. So, and there's multiple in, there's also, not in every borough, but they're strewn about multiple boroughs. And there's also multiple locations in Manhattan, just to be super correct about it. And so they're telling us like, oh, it's in the main one. Oh, no, you have to pay on Varick Street, but you have to go back to the main one. Then someone told me 100% they're on Staten Island. Thankfully, I knew enough to, before I drove to Staten Island, to call Staten Island, and they're like, it's definitely not here. So again, this is going on for like several days. They don't even know where it is. Then they tell us it's in a warehouse, but it's going to take them several days to make the copies of these. So we're waiting. We never get the copies back before we have to show up at court. But then, magically, the special counsel shows up with, I shit you not, a little wagon of my petitions. And I was like, oh, the gall. So it's obvious that they didn't want to give me my copies of my petitions before we went to court together. They wanted to have them. And then even after they showed up at court with them, it still took me almost over 24 hours after I knew damn well that they had them to get them. We had to go to a warehouse all the way on the west side, and then some guys like came down with a box of them, and again it was $231 and change to get copies of my own petitions, which is like fine. Like I know it takes labor and paper and whatever, like that's fine. It's also just hilarious that you can only pay cash when like it is very frowned upon when you're running a campaign to do cash transactions. So that part was hilarious. You're not really supposed to be dealing in cash. You're supposed to kind of only be dealing in campaign checks and your campaign credit card, ACH, that kind of thing. Okay, whatever. But it's just, it's just disorganization. It's, their rules are the highway. And then we finally got them back, and they had like, I don't know. It's now we'll get into the nitty gritty after this, like of identifications numbers and stuff. That's going to be too hard to explain. But that's the meat of the story, and that's what's going on now.
Enemy of the state.
Thanks, Mike. Right on time. So just a lot of bullshit going on. But again, we could go back a couple months to the episode where Mike and I talked about petitioning, and we knew, and I knew from the start, that this was going to be the most difficult part of the process where they would try to knock me out. There's a million things going on. We don't know what's going on. I don't know, if Andrew Cuomo is just angry at anyone who has had Lindsey Boylan on their podcast, or and I know that seems crazy because my votes are not going to affect Andrew Cuomo's votes. They're just not. If you like me, I don't think you're voting for Andrew Cuomo. That being said, he is known to be an extremely petty person. And so if you have the money and you have the time and you have the connections at the Board of Elections, why not fuck with me and just make my life miserable, waste my time, drain my campaign fund? Why not? If you're petty, you're petty. So I'm sure me talking about it on this podcast is not making anything better, but I'm just like so sick of this. And I think it's really important to continue speaking out. I just did a little piece on Chris Vega's podcast, Notes of a Goon, which should be coming out next week, about this all. And again, I would love to be mayor of New York City, but truly more important than that is that Andrew Cuomo doesn't get elected mayor, and that voter turnout for this municipal primary is way better than it is in previous years. It has historically been about a 5% turnout. We need to show up and vote. You can vote early. Like, they make it really easy. You can vote by mail. You have, I think starting like June 14th, I believe you can start voting by mail. So even if you're on vacation, just like bring your ballot with you wherever you're going on vacation and mail it from there early. Just like be a part of this, because that part really does make a difference. And wherever you are, just make sure that you're voting in municipal politics. And I would say, like, don't just go based off of, different endorsements from local groups, because I got to be honest, those groups are corrupt too. The local journalists who I really have valued on this show, at least when it comes to municipal, specifically politics, I don't trust them now. They're gatekeepers and they're part of this process too. I would think, I really think, and the way I've gotten, to know these candidates is through most times on YouTube, you can find mayoral forums where you can kind of get a feel for their personality. And this is like, depends. Like, I'm really good at reading people, like upon meeting them. Everyone doesn't have that skill. It's one of my like special talents. So if you feel like you're not good at reading people, don't use that skill. But these people are around, and you can meet them. And for me, like, meeting these other candidates and shaking their hands, I've gotten a much better sense of who I think is a little bit authentic and who is not authentic at all. And so I know it's a little extra work, but if we want things to stop being shitty and if we want to stop being abused by our government, we do have to put in these couple of extra steps. And it's not that difficult. And municipal candidates, again, it's where corruption starts, because just no one's paying attention. No one is paying attention. And I would still say, we have to all keep running. Like, please don't let my experience dissuade you. Number one, we knew it was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen again. Look back at the episodes. We knew I called this from the beginning. So we knew this was going to happen. Something like this was going to happen. I was prepared for it. I had the lawyers. And I had the kind of like mindset. And, New York City is the most corrupt of all the municipal politics spaces. It's also the largest as far as like power structure. But there are certainly smaller towns where you can run for mayor or whatever role that you want to run. And I think you can probably make a pretty big splash, especially like if there's like just an incumbent sitting there who hasn't been challenged, or if there's an open seat, people will make you feel like you're an imposter. But I truly do believe that, first of all, most of these candidates, they like know what their team tells them. These are not, no offense, these are not the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. I've met comedians who are much smarter than these politicians. So they're putting together policies with their entire campaign team. That's nothing that you can't do. You understand how your town where you work, the basic structure of it, I would assume. You understand the needs of the people in the space. You understand things that are working and things that aren't working. You have probably a general idea of how to allocate funds. Like, these things. Don't doubt yourself. You know how to do these things. And more importantly than that, like, if you don't owe favors to people, if you're a bold person, if you're someone who is not going to be easily swayed by other people's opinions, or, get luxurious things dangled in front of them and then fall for those empty rewards. If you're someone like that, then I think you should, try and run for office. It is not for the thin-skinned, that's for sure. But just try. Just like part of it is just like making a stink and making people pay attention. Like that's part of it. But don't do it just to be performative. Like there's a guy, I hate to even give him airtime, but there's a guy in New York who runs every single year. His name is Paperboy Prince, right? So I used to be interested in Paperboy Prince. I actually, I believe it was last mayoral election, I kind of was put on to him and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Basically what he's trying to do conceptually is he's a performance artist who is trying to say that politics is all of, a show. And on that level, I agree with him. So I agree with his kind of thesis here, right? But what has happened now is he's become part of that show. He stepped into the race initially as a critic of this performance, but now he interrupts mayoral forums in clown makeup, and he's like he's part of like this like clown party that is also ends up getting on the Democratic ballot. The way he gets to do that is because I think you've heard me talk on the show before, but like you can petition with a group of people, which makes it much easier to obtain the necessary amount of signatures. So you can be like, it can be like one mayoral candidate, one controller, one, whatever, one public advocate, one whatever. You can do a bunch of people, and then all those signatures count towards everyone. I actually don't think that should be allowed, especially for mayor, but here we are. And so he is, with a group of people. The problem is also like no one takes those candidates seriously, but he does achieve his goal, which is getting on the ballot every year. And I, asked him to be on Guys We Fucked a couple years ago, and he asked us for money, which even at the time I was like, that's very strange. If you're just trying to get out and talk to New Yorkers and I'm offering you like one of the largest platforms in New York City, especially for at that time. That's weird. And so I was kind of turned off by that. And like now being a part of the process, I'm like, you can't just like ask people for money. And I don't even believe he sent me like a donation link. I think he just like straight up asked for private payment, which is like very not okay. And so, his criticism has now become part of the circus. And it's unfortunate because, I'm over here really running a real campaign and desperately clawing away to try and get press, and he's getting covered for turning mayoral forums into circuses and making it all about him, when in reality it should be about a better future for New Yorkers, not some kind of like I have been wronged. And I was really want to be really careful with talking about these this petition court process, because I don't want to make it some like victim campaign about me specifically. It's not about me specifically. What is happening to me has happened to many people before who did not have the platform and did not have the financial means to speak out of it. And, possibly were scared to speak out about it because maybe they, did want to continue trying to work in City Hall. So that's why I'm doing this, And again, this was all the plan from the beginning. Obviously, I want to make it on the ballot, but if these, powers that be keep stopping me, I'm going to keep talking about it, and I'm going to find other people who similar situations happen to. If you know anyone who this happened to, please email me withoutaCountrypodcast@gmail.com. I'd be happy to talk to them on the record, off the record, have them on the show with their face showing, with their face not showing, whatever it is. Like I'm going to keep chipping away at this because this is not democracy, and that's the most important part of this process. Is that things are fair. But anyway, yeah, so Paperboy Prince is like, getting articles, written about him in the New York Post and stuff. And so basically you get attention if you are just like ridiculous, or you get attention if you're one of the major power players. But if you're someone kind of in the middle like me, who's just like trying to make a difference and is not doing anything, particularly showy, even though I would, argue this is an interesting story, they're not going to cover you because it's just not really like part of the narrative that they're interested in monetizing right now. So that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the skinny for right now. Again, I probably shouldn't have said any of that, but I just really don't care. I mean, that's at this point, I'm so stressed out and I'm so tired of these people. It's just really hard to constantly work every day with grown adults who you don't respect, who really lack integrity. It's hard to chew on. lack of integrity and also no sense of humor about anything, no self-awareness, a lack of, actually wanting to make things better, like completely strategy and money driven and on this like insane quest for power. It is sickening. It's really sickening. So
God forgive them. They don't know what they're doing.
that's what I say about that. But yeah, that's the update for this week. So extra juicy, thanks to everyone who reached out, especially people who are helping with who have ins with press. Like you guys have been so amazing with getting me help and access to press. And thank you for everyone who took it upon themselves to want to contribute financially during this, these past couple of days. As I said, you might have noticed I kind of stopped doing hard asks because I didn't feel like it was ethical to continue to ask for money during a time when I didn't even know if I was going to make it on the ballot or not. So I halted my fundraising, even though I was still had to pay my fundraising guy. I halted my entire team, even though I'm still paying everybody, and these are not cheap. I'm paying my campaign manager. I'm paying my field director. I'm paying my fundraising director. I'm paying all my consultants. A lot of them are on monthly salaries, and I just I have to continue paying them. It's not their fault that this is happening, although they are, not new to these, experiences and have certainly had clients or candidates knocked off the ballot before. But yeah, I feel bad, because a lot of my canvassers and stuff were hourly, and they were certainly banking on getting a lot of hourly work during this time. Everyone's been really cool, and I hope that they have access to other work, and I'm trying to give everyone as much as I can, but again, I just didn't feel like it was ethical to act like everything was okay and ask for money. So thank you for everyone who did donate during this time. Your money, even though your money perhaps isn't going to be spent on what you thought it would be spent. I mean, first of all, you never know with a campaign what it's being spent on. I do think that it is a valiant pursuit, I will say. So I hope that you feel the same way. Right now, I think these court bills are going to cost me $15,000, and then a little bit more for filing fees. And that's that's actually a pretty good rate that they gave me, because I think my lawyers really want to win this battle with me. But yeah, so that's where we're at now. So thanks for everyone who's been a part of this. My goal is to at least set some kind of legal precedent to make it easier for people to run in the future. That's the goal. That would be great. I think that would be a really great takeaway from this campaign. And if, but at least I'm being transparent and really letting you know how everything is working. So, yeah. But, keep talking about it. I hope this is, if anything, has made you more likely to vote in your local elections and, find out if you have closed or open primaries so you can be registered with the party that you'd like to be seeing winning. And, even if you can just give a couple days here and there during a political process to help canvass for a candidate that you like, that you think has good morals, I think that would be super cool and super helpful. And, I think, the definitely the upside to this is I've learned so much. You learn so much about the space you live in. I've lived in New York City for over 22 years at this point, and you just continue learning so much about the space and the people, and it really helps you to widen your perspective. Because I think even in New York City, we live in all these neighborhoods, and in one neighborhood, everyone says, oh, well, this candidate's doing really well. And I'm like, well, this candidate's doing really well in this neighborhood. But if you go to the Upper East Side, it's 90% votes for Andrew Cuomo. So it really gets us out of our bubbles. And the same as, your perspective can be really shifted or be kind of molded by what you follow on social media. I think the same is true for the neighborhood in which you live and the places that you go to on the weekend. Even in New York City, we think oh, this is a pretty left-leaning space. There are plenty of Republicans in New York City. And there are plenty, obviously like a very wide bracket of financial backgrounds from very, very poor to very, very rich in New York City. As, in an urban area like this disparity is going to be great. And so it just really helps you to get outside your bubble. And I think, probably if you listen to this show, you were already there more so than other people. But I think it will just continue to help you do that and be less surprised when political outcomes are the way they are. So that's my thoughts for today. I'm obviously beaten down a bit. I feel like I just keep getting fucking psychosomatically ill. I'm not really someone who gets ill a lot, and I'm just I just feel like in Mortal Kombat, when you're just when you can which is a very old reference, but a Mortal Kombat arcade game. I was talking to Chris Vega earlier, and I was it just feels like when you're able to lock in on your opponent and just kind of keep them in an uppercut and keep punching them, that's what I feel like right now.
That's hot.
And that's hot. All right. So thank you so much to everyone who's been supporting the Patreon on here. That's so helpful, especially with everything that I'm going through. So I really appreciate that. Obviously, I'm unable to go on tour or do money for stand up. And everyone's suffering right now. So it's really cool of you to take some money out of your account that you could do literally anything with, and you choose to spend it to access more of this show. So that's really, really cool of you, and I appreciate you. All hail to our dictator, Hannah Pendergrass. Again, if you're in the Chicago area and you want to get your hair did for summer, color, extensions, whatever it is, look up Hannah Pendergrass, color and extensions, and make an appointment. Again, we love supporting a small business. We love supporting a woman-owned business. We love supporting a fellow wacko and a fucker. So go ahead and do that. Her work is incredible. And I want to give a warm welcome to 2 new capitalist pigs this week. We have Kayla Hunsucker and Eric Quick. Thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate you. Moving on to our wacko mailbag. I got an email regarding some bird flu information from Crystal Heath, who was the veterinarian that we talked to a while ago on this show. And she wanted to update me on some animal stuff because I know she is, or she knows that I am a animal lover. A lot of it is kind of raw footage that she took. So I'm just going to read the email about this animal welfare issue. She says, "Hi, Corinne. You've had me on your show before to discuss how veterinary students are forced to participate in labs that kill animals in veterinary school. Hope you guys remember that episode. I'm reaching out with a clinical, underreported public health story I recently captured on the ground in New York City. I'm a veterinarian whose work has been featured in the New York Times, Newsweek's Time, Reuters, The Washington Post, and most recently in BBC's Science Focus, among others. Earlier this month, I documented conditions inside Queens live poultry markets where, despite the spread of avian influenza, workers are routinely handling live birds without basic protective equipment like masks or gloves, and customers are freely entering without precautions. This is happening even as New York State authorities acknowledge the risk and urge the use of PPE, yet they have failed to mandate or enforce it. Despite new testing protocols, bird flu outbreaks have now been detected at 22 live bird markets in New York City, which is a fun thing. You're I didn't even really fucking know there was a live bird market. You're okay, I guess I just didn't really think about that. But there is a link to it if you want to know the locations. These densely packed markets where multiple species are confined together in urban neighborhoods create the perfect environment for viral reassortment, a genetic swap between bird flu and seasonal flu viruses that could enable human-to-human transmissions. Experts warn that even a single mutation could tip H5N1 into a new pandemic threat, yet officials continue to treat worker and customer safety as optional. This isn't simply an animal welfare issue, it's a looming public health emergency fueled by regulatory inaction. And it's low-income immigrant workers and local residents who are being put most directly at risk. as fucking always. I'd be happy to share the exclusive footage I captured, summary linked below, offer veterinary and public health commentary, or work with your team on an urgent story connecting this situation to the broader risks of zoonotic spillover and pandemic preparedness failures. And I just got this today. She sent it a couple days ago. I just got it today because I have, 18,000 email accounts at this rate for the mayoral campaign. So I only check the Without a Country one a couple times a week. But yeah, and then she includes, live footage of markets in Queens, and photos. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like terribly interesting to play on this show, but oof. This is rough too because it's animal abuse. I mean, do you want to like play one of them, Mike? Or are you in that, or should I forward this email to you? Is that better if I forward this?
Yeah, forward it to me, please. I'm just seeing the email in the doc.
Okay, I'm sending it to your Gmail. I don't know. I like pressed on the first one. I mean, it's just like, and it's also terrible because like not only is this unsafe, but like it's so abusive to these animals. I'm not really big into eating animals to begin with, but like, if you're going to eat them, I guess free range, not like this torturous life where they're just merely produced to die and being like whipped around by their little feetsies. I know birds don't have feet, but they're feetsies to me. I mean, it's just like pretty rough. So, this is Wacko Mailbag, but this is also definitely a cutie's corner. Pretty bad. Are you looking at which one is the most gruesome to show the wackos?
It was just taking me a second to get it
Yeah.
Formatted the right way.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like a lot of. Yeah, I mean, like it's like, even if you don't like animals or you're not like terribly concerned about eating chickens, like. Even from a health perspective, like, do you want to be putting this in your mouth? This doesn't look sanitary. Oh, God. So that's that. Just thought that would be interesting to share with you. We love an exclusive here on the show. Ay. And I know it kind of seems like, oh, there's so much stuff to worry about. Like, I can't possibly add like something else to my list. And like, I hear you. So, like as I always say, pick and choose what it is you want to be worried about right now. Right now, I'm worried about the electoral process. Like that's what I'm worried about now. So I can't really be worried about other things at this time. And you choose whatever it is that works for you at this time. All right, some, more positive news. Let's get into girl. Canada, you had a big week. This is from the New York Times. Canada's Liberals narrowly miss out on majority in Parliament. But more importantly, like you had a big Liberal win for your new leader. Canada winner, Liberal Party. So let me take this actually. This is from the BBC instead. So Canada's Liberal Party projected to form minority government as Trump congratulates Carney. Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has spoken to U.S. President Donald Trump. And so basically this, this new Prime Minister, he ran on the platform of like anti-Trumpism. Like that was the whole thing, which is, I guess odd for a country that is not run by Trump. But, that's what happened. And so that's the platform he ran on, and people really responded to that, which is cool. Here, this might be better, actually. So Mark Carney's Liberals win Canada's election. Here are 4 takeaways. This is from the New York Times. Sorry, I'm floating around here. I didn't really like the original article I picked. The former central banker, again, we're already in wonky territory when he's a banker, successfully convinced voters that he was the right candidate to confront President Trump's trade war and threats to annex the country. And so again, we kind of see this, trend of non-traditional candidates, but I would argue that after someone who's been in politics their whole life, someone who's been in some kind of a financial business is usually our next go-to. And I don't think that either of those are necessarily like the choices that we want. But here we go. Let's see what kind of a job he does. Prime Minister Mark Carney led his Liberal Party to a narrow victory in Canada's pivotal election on Monday, securing a fourth term in power for the party and a renewed mandate to lead the fight against President Trump over trade and the nation's sovereignty. Mr. Carney, a former central banker who was running for office for the first time, which is a huge achievement, struck a combative tone toward the United States during his acceptance speech in the early hours of Tuesday at a Liberal Party event in Ottawa. And this is also, I think, quite historic because of this overall rightward movement we've been seeing internationally, not just in America, which I want to continue pointing out. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but the reason I want to continue pointing it out is because you never want to look at an issue as if it's smaller than it is. And I think like kind of being narrow, having a narrow view and making this an only American problem is, first of all, just inaccurate. And second of all, makes the problem seem smaller and only American, which I think we love to do. It's kind of like in vogue to live in America, be left-leaning and be anti-America. I am completely against that. I am very far left, but I am super pro-America, and that does not mean that I condone most of the things we do. But I would never say I hate America. I think that's extremely short-sighted, and I think that if many of us lived in any other country, we would have a really rude awakening. So I do think that we have to be and I also think other countries have not necessarily an accurate perception of how things actually are in this country based on the news that they're reading. I hear people in Australia and the UK and Canada kind of I would never go to America. And it's yeah, our news, if you just read news about us, it does seem like things are horrific here, but the day-to-day is not like that. It's the same as how other states read stories about New York City and you think it's just gunfights on the subway, and that's just completely inaccurate to what's actually happening here. I digress though. I think, this is a really interesting specific occurrence in Canada. And okay, so he was combative tone towards the United States during his acceptance speech in the early hours of Tuesday at a Liberal Party event in Ottawa. But the Liberals failed to win a majority of seats in the House of Commons, so Mr. Carney's government will need to rely on smaller parties to push through his legislative agenda. Carney promises to face up to Trump. Mr. Carney has not met Mr. Trump in person since becoming Liberal Party leader and Prime Minister last month, but he made Mr. Trump's menacing comments about making Canada the 51st state and the tariffs he has imposed on Canadian goods the center of his campaign. The two men held what was described as a professional call before the election, even though Mr. Carney said during the campaign that Mr. Trump had brought up the 51st state threat during the conversation. Mr. Carney has said that he will maintain Canada's retaliatory tariffs against the United States, but he has cautioned that expanding them would harm Canadians more than they would pressure Americans. Mr. Carney has also pledged to diversify Canada's alliances and trading relationships, and he made a brief but important trip to Europe to underscore that approach last month. In his acceptance speech, Mr. Carney stressed that his priority would be to continue to push back against Mr. Trump. As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country, he said. Mr. Trump is trying to break us so he can own us. That will never happen. He also warned Canadians that confronting the American threat would be difficult and might require sacrifices. That's so funny because I feel like Canadians were receptive to that. But if you had ran on a campaign that told Americans we might have to have sacrifices for a long-term goal that would benefit democracy, that candidate would immediately lose. The result was close. Mr. Carney's victory was an extraordinary political comeback for the Liberals. Just a few months ago, they trailed the opposition Conservative Party under Pierre Poilievre, sorry, that's like French, but I fucked it up real bad, by nearly 30 percentage points, which is really cool to see how in a short period of time things can really change, according to opinion polls. And it was widely expected that the Liberals faced a near-death experience. But that was before Mr. Trump began talking about annexing Canada and imposing potentially crippling tariffs on the country. So because of Donald Trump's extremism, he is actually having the opposite effect of, I'm sure, what he wants, which is he's turning those surrounding countries more liberal, which is, it's similar to why things went so right. That was a response to you will say in a colloquial way, over wokeness, but that was like the response to that. But for every, reaction, there is for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So now we're seeing the reaction to that, right? It was also before Justin Trudeau, who many voters had soured on after nearly a decade in office, stepped down as prime minister. I feel like that's just like you stayed in too long. Because remember when Justin Trudeau first went into office, he was beloved. He was beloved. And now he's a joke. It just shows like how fickle the voting public is. Early in the campaign.
Corinne.
What?
To say the voting public is fickle and not that he did a clown show of a job running a country for 5 years is crazy to put on the voters.
No. But it is also true. It's like they're fickle, and also it's not that he didn't do a bad job. It's like maybe he was bad the whole time and they just like never saw it because they were easily dazzled by a good-looking man with interesting socks. So that, I think, is on the voters. We need to stop being dazzled by attractive people who can sweet talk us. It's the same fucking problem that we have in dating. We have in voting. The amount of people who like think certain celebrities are good people because they sweet talk us is crazy. We as the voting public, we do have to start taking ownership over our votes. We can't just trust these people based on what they say. It's crazy. I never liked Justin Trudeau. Because I was like, this guy is just walking around and not getting questioned because he's handsome. First of all, I didn't think he was that handsome. I think he's generic. And I'm not saying like, that's what, but like, there's basically it is like almost impossible as a politician to be liked the whole time. It's like almost impossible. No one is liked the whole time.
Yeah, especially when you shut down bank accounts for hardworking Canadians because they disagree with you.
Yeah, I'm not saying, again, never liked the guy, so this is kind of like not a thing, but I'm like, both things can be true. The first thing that I was said to me when I started running for office from someone, who I actually think does have integrity on the inside was like the voting public they'll change on you drop of a dime. And a better example than Justin Trudeau is perhaps Andrew Yang, who was like kind of polling at the top for the last mayoral election here in New York City. And then based on like 2 videos where he called like a fancy supermarket a bodega, and then he said like one specific train line went to the Bronx when it didn't, he ended up coming in 4th place. So I don't think those, while those are kind of funny, I don't actually think those are reasons that you should lose an election. And if that's if that's like the kind of thing that we're voting based off of, that's how you end up with a clown like Eric Adams.
It felt very I understand what you're saying.
I know. It feels like you're faking it for sure.
It feels like you're using New York to further your own political goals.
Which they kind of should have caught on from the beginning. When I looked at, I went back and I watched like Andrew Yang's announcement video because I just didn't remember. Like I'm familiar with who he is and stuff, but I'm like I'm like maybe I missed something. Maybe like I wasn't dazzled in the right way. And like I watched it. And I'm like, this is a fucking nerd. Like, this is a dork. And he's, and even like, he's like, go Knicks. But like, that didn't even seem authentic. And I'm just like, I like that you're saying that. And I like that you're kind of being regular. And like, I like that you're participating in things that regular New Yorkers would participate in, as a huge Knicks fan. But like, it was just weird. I don't know.
He hit a go Knicks, but it was September, 2 months after the season ended and 2 months before the next one starts.
Yeah, it's just, it was just kind of like, yeah, I don't, and I had a talk at the beginning of my campaign with my staff, like, I was like, I want to be genuine without being dorky. And one of my staff members was like, but people kind of like dorky. And I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't know the answer here. All right. So it was also before Justin Trudeau, who many voters had soured on after nearly a decade in office, stepped down as prime minister. Early in the campaign, polls started to suggest that the Conservatives' sizable lead had evaporated and that the Liberals under Mr. Carney might be headed for a decisive win. But during the final week or so of the campaign, the gap between the two parties narrowed as voters' concerns shifted away from Mr. Trump's designs on Canada and back to concerns about the cost of living. While the Conservatives were denied power, the party appeared headed for its biggest share of the popular vote since 1988, and it will most likely win more seats than it did in the previous parliament. The Conservatives made gains, but their leader lost his seat. Mr. Poilievre lost his seat in Ottawa, a stinging defeat for a man who seems set to become the next prime minister just a few weeks ago. He is a career politician and has held the seat for the past 2 decades since he was 25. Before news of his loss had been confirmed, Mr. Poilievre conceded the general election but vowed to stay on as leader. He framed the Conservative result as the start of a major shift in Canadian politics, highlighting the important gains the party had made under his leadership. But it is not clear whether his party will stick with him. Despite crediting Mr. Poilievre with lifting the Conservatives, there are segments of the party that hold him accountable for failing to successfully pivot after the threat posed by Mr. Trump. Losing his seat weakens his authority, and the Conservative caucus ousted the party's 2 previous leaders after election losses. But analysts expressed belief that he still had a strong grip on the party. Carney will have to make big decisions quickly. After his call with Mr. Trump last month, Mr. Carney said that the U.S. president had agreed to swiftly enter broad talks on security and economic issues with whoever won Monday's election, so a meeting between the two leaders is expected soon. Mr. Carney will also have to quickly make a number of domestic political decisions, starting with forming a cabinet and beginning a parliamentary session. Other experiences awaiting him include being grilled in Parliament for the first time, and Mr. Carney will soon host the leaders of the group of 7 industrialized nations. Mr. Trump and the leaders of Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan, as well as the European Union, are expected to attend the summit to be held in Kananaskis, a mountain resort in Alberta, in mid-June. So that's something interesting to keep an eye on. I know a lot of people thought that was like super positive news. So again, good on Canada. Let's keep our eye on that. We also just hit our first 100 days of Donald Trump a couple days ago. PEN America, which is pen.org if you're looking into it, released a statement that says a 5-alarm fire for free speech based on Trump's first 100 days. I think that's an interesting way. I wanted to do something to commemorate Trump's first 100 days. And I thought specifically this, kind of assessment of the regression of free speech was interesting. It says 2 things form the bedrock of any open society: freedom of expression and rule of law. If you don't have those things, you don't have a free country. So it says attacks on speech betray a bedrock principle of our democracy. As seen in chilling surveillance video, Rumeysa Öztürk, a backpack-wearing graduate student on her way to break the Ramadan fast, is surrounded by plainclothes officers, many in masks, then handcuffed and bundled into an unmarked SUV. She was not the first international student targeted by the Trump administration for her speech, in this case reportedly an opinion piece she co-authored for the Tufts student newspaper, and we watched that footage here on this show, published more than a year earlier. And she has not been the last. The unconstitutional detention of Öztürk, a student and aspiring children's book author, in retaliation for writing an op-ed, is part of a frontal assault on freedom of expression by the Trump administration in its first 100 days, unlike anything seen in this country since the McCarthy era. Through vague, vitriolic, and overbroad executive orders and other actions, the Trump administration has attacked rights, ideas, and words it doesn't agree with, justifying some edicts by claiming an intent to liberate Americans through a twisted and false version of restoring free speech. In the fusillade of executive orders over the past 100 days, the Trump administration has betrayed the bedrock principle of our democracy, that you should be free to express your opinion without fear of punishment by the government. You should be free to say the emperor has no clothes. Many previous administrations have taken actions that were questionable from a First Amendment perspective. The Biden administration may well have blurred the line into jawboning tech companies. The Obama administration restricted press access and prosecuted government employees who leaked information to reporters. And the George W. Bush administration's Patriot Act, with its sweeping surveillance powers, laid the groundwork for much of the repression we are seeing now. But what is happening today is a different kind altogether. No federal administration has moved as swiftly to exert broad new controls over what people can say, read, learn, research, and think. The heavy-handed imposition of government ideology and efforts to instill a culture of fear echo the tactics of repressive regimes, and they are having the intended effect. Across not just government agencies, but schools and universities, corporations, libraries, museums, and the media, there is already a pervasive sense that one must watch what one says in order to avoid government retaliation. If free speech is the bedrock of democracy, fear and paranoia lay the groundwork for authoritarianism. Those who choose not to concede or self-censor, who choose to speak out despite the risks, offer us the clearest path to protecting our fundamental rights and safeguarding our democracy. Courage is contagious, and we will all need more of it in the days to come. The heavy-handed imposition of government ideology and efforts to instill a culture of fear echo the tactics of repressive regimes, and they are having the intended effect. I'm just rereading that because they did bold it. So, write it on your mirror. Dozens of the more than 130 executive orders and actions taken by the Trump administration in the first 100 days have alarming implications for free expression. Among them, attacking language and identities, executive orders attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what the administration called radical gender ideology eroded civil rights protections and contributed to federal departments and agencies banning more than 350 words by PEN America's count. The utterly chilling array of everyday terms forbidden in government agencies, websites, or even scientific research proposals to federal agencies have cast a broad chilling effect, eroding our ability to engage freely in dialogue and advance human knowledge. The message that certain terms are off limits has also encouraged sectors that in any way interact with the government to erase these words as well. These orders represent an escalation of the ideologically restrictive attacks that have underpinned educational gag orders and book bans that PEN America has been tracking across the country since 2021. But they go further, stripping away the very terms necessary for serious conversation about a great many social issues. Attacking dissent. The administration is enacting an unconstitutional ideological litmus test for visa and asylum seekers and is targeting non-citizens in retaliation for pro-Palestinian activism and speech protected by the First Amendment, including by unlawfully detaining and attempting to forcefully remove legal residents from the country. The administration attempted to revoke more than 1,800 student visas and said it would monitor immigrants' social media for evidence of support of anti-Semitic terrorism or anti-Semitic activity, using language vague enough to sweep up a broad range of speech. That the administration's crackdown or immigration has demonstrated such an explicit disregard for the First Amendment is generating fear among non-citizens and citizens alike. Attacking education. The administration's executive orders and actions regarding the education place restrictions on ideas and concepts across the K through 12 and higher education sectors and have been accompanied by retaliation against institutions that resist government control. These have included bans on so-called discriminatory equity ideology and gender ideology and the prohibition of all diversity, equity, and inclusion or DEI programs. The administration has used vaguely defined terminology to justify these censorial bans. I'm going to sneeze, sorry. And attack any analysis. Thank you. Any analysis of social structures and inequalities. Those orders, alongside weaponized claims of an insufficient response to anti-Semitism on some college campuses, are being used in an attempt to bulldoze the independence of American universities and strong-arm them into bending to the administration's will, with some alarming signs of success, including Columbia University's concessions and the first known college-level book bans at the U.S. Naval Academy. When Harvard University fought back against an astonishing array of demands to rein in its independence, the administration retaliated by freezing funds and threatening to strip the university of its tax-exempt status, a potentially crippling blow. Meanwhile, the administration has also sought new ways to mandate patriotic education in schools and through other public education vehicles, putting a clear ideological stamp on education across the board. Attacking the press and information, the administration has shut down vital government-funded news outlets and gone after funding for NPR and PBS. President Trump has made groundless claims that mainstream media is corrupt and engages in illegal activity, which I'm actually going to side with him on. Like, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, but that doesn't mean you shut down the press, though, right? Because corrupt stuff is happening on every level. That means that we need more people with integrity getting into journalism and, being like that reporter who stepped down from the Washington Post when Jeff Bezos tried to tell her what she could and couldn't write. Like, that's the kind, being a journalist is like an extremely noble profession. So don't become part of the problem,
Did you see the 60 Minutes EP quit this week?
No.
They so CBS, I told you this a while ago. CBS is trying to sell their parent company. Paramount is trying to sell.
Okay.
So they are whatever sale they're going to have to make needs to be passed by the Trump administration because it's such a big sale. And he also has a personal lawsuit against them for them talking smack about him.
Yeah, of course.
He is 100% standing in between them and whatever deal they make.
Yeah.
And as a result, they're starting to editorialize 60 Minutes a little bit more. And the EP said, nah, dog, that's not what I became a newsman for. And he's out.
And that's exactly what we need. You if you're a journalist, you have to be truly willing to work on your own. You can't be in cahoots with other politicians or whatever. So this is, and it's hard because I certainly don't want to agree with Donald Trump, but some things he's pointing out are fucked up, but he also does so much fucked up stuff that it kind of negates it. An executive order purporting to support free speech, in fact, laid the groundwork for the greater spread of disinformation. Meanwhile, there has been an effort to bully the Associated Press into ideological compliance with the now official designation of the Gulf of America in place of the Gulf of Mexico, attacking cultural institutions. The administration slashed funding for museums and libraries, demanded that NEA grant applications swear to forego diversity programs, instructed Vice President J.D. Vance to make changes to the famed Smithsonian Institution to address what the administration calls the promotion of improper ideology, and installed the president as head of the historically apolitical Kennedy Center, declaring that he would usher in a golden age of arts and culture. And so it's so hypocritical, in my opinion, to say that journalists are corrupt, but I am going to now be in charge of arts and culture, which is, to me, complementary to journalism in kind of the way that we share information and stories, right? Shortly thereafter, the center canceled events featuring LGBTQ plus voices and stories, including a performance by the Gay Men's Chorus of Washington, D.C. and a children's musical called Finn. And also, didn't he ban Harvey Fierstein from the Kennedy Center? He started banning specific outspoken LGBTQ plus artists and shit. Sorry, I took.
First, I'm hearing of that, but
I believe
I believe it.
Sorry, I'm very sniffly. I took allergy medicine, but it's seemingly not working. I'm having a rough day. Harvey Fierstein, Kennedy Center, Trump. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he was banned. Yeah, because he denounced Trump's takeover. Good for him. Attacking free expression globally by decimating U.S. foreign assistance and shifting to an American-first foreign policy, the Trump administration is waging a crippling attack on writers, journalists, artists, and activists around the world who fight for democracy and human rights. The administration's ideological capture and crackdown on dissent has reverberated across the world, emboldening authoritarian regimes to suppress civil society in their own countries while gutting the structures and funds that support independent voices. Below, PEN America catalogs major threats to freedom of expression in the United States since January 20th. And so this goes a little bit more in depth. If you want to read like more in depth over the summarized things that we just went over, you can head over to pen.org, /report/Trump-administration-100-days. We'll also put that, in the show notes as well, though. But as I said, I needed to commemorate the first 100 days. Then we move on to my favorite, Politico. For our next girl, we just had a report on this. Judge frees Columbia student activist whom Trump administration wants to deport. Mohsen Madawi was arrested as part of a crackdown on pro-Palestinian students who were legally studying in the United States. This is in Burlington, Vermont. A federal judge on Wednesday today ordered the immediate release of a Columbia University student who was detained by immigration authorities and targeted for deportation over his involvement in pro-Palestinian protests. Mohsen Madawi was arrested as part of a crackdown on foreign students who were legally studying in the United States. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has invoked a rarely used provision of immigration law to target some of the students for deportation by declaring that their continued presence in the country harms America's foreign policy interests. Madawi was detained April 14th when he showed up to an immigration office in Vermont for a naturalization interview, which we know is like something that they were doing. I'm saying it loud and clear. Madawi said outside a federal courthouse shortly after U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Crawford, an Obama appointee, ordered his release. To President Trump and his cabinet, I am not afraid of you. Crawford's order does not end the Trump administration's effort to deport Madawi. It simply allows him to remain free while his case proceeds. Another federal judge, Clinton appointee William Sessions III, had previously blocked immigration authorities from transferring Madawi to a detention facility in a more conservative judicial district, a strategy the Trump administration has used with other detainees. Madawi is Palestinian and grew up in the West Bank, but has lived in the U.S. for a decade. He has a green card, making him a legal permanent resident, and was in the final stages of the process to become a U.S. citizen when immigration authorities arrested him. Like other pro-Palestinian students and professors who have been arrested and thrust into swift deportation proceedings in President Donald Trump's first 100 days, Madawi has argued that the administration is violating the First Amendment by targeting him for criticizing Israel and participating in campus protests. Another leader of Colombia's pro-Palestinian protest movement, Mahmoud Khalil, has been fighting the Trump administration's efforts to deport him for nearly 2 months. Khalil, who like Madawi has a green card, is currently detained in Louisiana. Other academics whom the Trump administration is seeking to quickly deport include Badar Khan Suri, a Georgetown University researcher who was detained in part over his father-in-law's role as a former advisor to Hamas, which, now you're not in charge of what your family does, but you're getting a little wonky there. And Rumeysa Öztürk, a Tufts University student who has written critically about Israel, which that's no problem. All of them have been deemed by Rubio to be adverse to U.S. foreign policy interests. Courts have been increasingly skeptical of the deportation effort, with one Reagan-appointed judge ruling Tuesday that a broad First Amendment challenge to the effort can move forward. But Madawi is believed to be the first student ordered released from detention after being targeted by Rubio's foreign policy determination. The Departments of State and Homeland Security did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The administration quickly signaled its intent to appeal Crawford's ruling to the Massachusetts-based First Circuit Court of Appeals. Crawford said at a court hearing Wednesday that Madawi, a resident of the Upper Valley region in Vermont, had experienced great harm by being detained for 2 weeks. Even another day of detention is not to be tolerated, the judge said. Crawford compared the Trump administration's targeting of college students over their speech to the McCarthyism of the 1950s, when academics were persecuted for suspected communist sympathies. The wheel has come around again, the judge said. Crawford determined that Madawi did not pose a public safety or flight risk, and under the conditions of his release, he is permitted to continue to attend classes at Columbia in New York. Madawi is set to graduate in May and plans to pursue a graduate degree in the fall. The judge indicated he would issue a written order spelling out more details about the conditions of Madawi's release. Madawi walked out of the courtroom minutes after the judge announced his decision from the bench to a raucous crowd of several hundred supporters, whom he led in several anti-war chants. Madawi said that when he was arrested earlier this month, he was immediately driven to the airport to be sent to an out-of-state holding facility, but missed the flight by 9 minutes. Me standing here in front of you sends a clear message. We, the people, will hold the Constitution accountable for the principles that we believe in, Madawi said. Okay. So that's like an update on everything that's happening with the first 100 days. I wanted to go into this piece as more of like a social commentary piece that I thought would really pique Mike Girldad Harrington's interest. The title alone reminded me of discussions that we've had many times on this show, which is from the Free Press, How Did Having Babies Become Right-Wing? As you know, many times on this show, Mike has accused me of, I believe, hating family would be the quote.
I did not say you hate family.
I think you have said that.
I said,
I think you said I hate family.
I said, are you that anti-family? Is the quote.
Okay. I like that you know it. We'll make a bumper sticker.
Oh, yeah, I keep receipts.
Okay. Well, good. You and not the Board of Elections. All right. So, but I think this is interesting because
if only the Board of Elections could be as responsible as
Mike
Harrington. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, I think this is interesting though because we kind of do feel this in the air, right? Like this kind of being a traditional family, meaning married partners with children. Like it does feel kind of Republican now. And it certainly shouldn't, that is not good for liberals if, Republicans keep procreating and liberals don't. Well, we're about to move really rightward, right? Strategically. I'll be dead, so I don't got to worry about it. But how did having babies become right wing? The government wants to encourage Americans to have more babies. An eclectic male-dominated coalition has some ideas about how can they succeed. And this is by Madeline Kearns from Culture and Ideas, again, at the Free Press. Austin, Texas. It's Friday night in Austin, and roughly 200 people are on their way to the Bullock, Texas State History Museum to talk about how to make America made again. This is Americans' second natal conference, which we talked about last week. Sold out at $1,000 a ticket, and though I wore the orange wristband given to all the reporters present, I was repeatedly mistaken for an attendee. Do we remember where we talked about the natal conference last week? Where was that from?
I don't remember. I'll look it up.
I suspect it was because I'm visibly pregnant. On my way into the hall, I encountered 10 protesters wearing surgical masks, all apparently in their early 20s. They were holding signs that declared no Nazis in Austin and Natalism, Nazism. And when they saw me approaching, several members screamed at me, Nazi. And, because I kind of talked last week that it seemed like they were specifically encouraging white people to procreate, and you kind of scoffed at me. But then I found a lot of other articles that were kind of aligned with my assessment of the situation, which is why we're now getting into Nazism.
Well, I mean, if you're doing any event that has $1,000 ticket to it is for, especially if we're talking about a reproductive conference having $1,000 ticket, and it's not like a mega orgy, that is liberal, not liberal, that's conservative white women shit.
Well, I don't think necessarily white women, white couples. Men like having babies too.
Yeah, but I just and
I would say more so, actually.
yeah, and I mean, if you look at like the Elons of the world, like you
Yeah,
know, the
that guy's
dudes
crazy.
with means having 14 kids.
Right. When I clarified that I was not a Nazi.
Oh, it was Mother Jones, by the way.
Oh, okay. When I clarified that I was not a Nazi, but a report. Okay, so this is interesting because this is like, Mother Jones is super left. And so free press is like kind of centrist at this point, I would say. But sometimes they have, takes that are, in my opinion, almost Republican. When I clarified that I was not a Nazi, but a reporter, they calmed down. But I did wonder if it was my bump that had riled them up. I asked what they were doing here, and they identified themselves as members of Austin Students for a Democratic Society. The organizer of the protest, Aricia Papri, 20, was dressed in a fedora, purple suit, and bow tie. I asked him, is it fair to shout at attendees who have young children with them? I think everyone who's coming to this, knows what they are here for, he replied. This is a conference of neo-Nazi, eugenic, racist, pseudoscientific ideologies. This was not, as it turned out, an accurate description of NatalCon, though it was certainly representative of the left's reaction to it. Established in 2023 by Kevin Dolan, a Mormon father of 6 and a conservative influencer, NatalCon is a response to the fact that in America, as in dozens of nations across the world, the birth rate has fallen well below the replacement level of 2.1 births per woman. And this is something we've talked about a lot on this show. In 2023, U.S. fertility hit a historical low of 1.62. The strange thing is, it's not that Americans don't want babies. Men and women of all demographics consistently report wanting more kids than they ultimately have. Few deny that the consequences for society will be terrible, and yet nobody quite knows what to do about it. Last week, the New York Times reported that the White House has been soliciting policy ideas about how to encourage Americans to have more kids. We talked about the medal of motherhood last week. There's talk of everything from baby bonuses to government-funded programs that teach women to recognize when they're ovulating. But several countries that have recently experimented with natalist policies like this, Italy, Greece, and Hungary among them, have failed dismally. All of them have seen birth rates fall. I would say, if we're actually worried about people, obviously we want to support mothers more. We want to lower the cost of living. And then I would say we want to make the food that we eat much better, because infertility, in my opinion, is definitely linked to the shitty food that we put in our bodies. And that's, is specifically American. Obviously, this is happening in many other countries. But infertility is a big problem here, thus the surge of IVF and all of that, which is, making doctors, millions and millions of dollars. So perhaps it's all on purpose, but whatever. So can kids come up with some better ways to get people to have more kids? So can America come up with ways to have more kids? That's the aim of NatalCon. The motley crew of speakers included social media influencers, religious conservatives, tech optimists, economists, demographers, and researchers. One attendee described NatalCon to me as an assemblage of personalities, almost all purely internet-based personalities. See, this is the kind of stuff that I want to start going to in conjunction with this show. And I have to figure out how to go about getting a press pass. Because again, that's the one good thing about the Trump administration. He's much loosey-goosier with what means press and what doesn't. And he's accepting social media influencers as press, which again, I think is quite smart of him. Number one, seeing the success of right-wing social commentators. And then secondly, I do think that we just have to start accepting social media personalities as part of the press, because that's where so many people are getting their information. They disagreed on everything from family structure and gender roles to abortion and IVF, but all of them stood united in the belief that babies are good and the world needs more of them. Babies good. Natal Conference 2025. Natal Conference has no political or ideological goal other than a world in which our children can have grandchildren, declares the website. And yet, it was hard to ignore the fact that most of the speakers were politically right of center. And again, that's very interesting that they're pointing that out in a piece in the Free Press. On the left, natalism is often seen as a form of bigotry. Liberal commentators have argued that it is a nationalist project to outbreed people from other parts of the world, which I kind of agree with. They've argued that it's racist or eugenist plot to yield more white, genetically perfect babies. I do think it is a plan to get more white babies. I wouldn't say necessarily genetically perfect. What does that even mean? They've argued that it's anti-feminist, stopped telling women what to do, or at the extreme, a form of violence against women. Well, I mean, it's their choice. It was basically inevitable that natalism would be seen as right-wing, said father of 4 Brian Kaplan, the author of Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids and a speaker at this year's NatalCon. Why? Because it's disagreeing with 2 left-wing things. Environmentalism, which in its dominant form posits that the population is too high already, and feminism. By being a natalist, you are, in effect, raising the status of traditional women and saying, at minimum, if there is a trade-off between being maximally successful in your job and being a mom, it's not clear that you should go with maximum success in your career. I actually disagree with this. I think feminism at its core is doing whatever the fuck you want to do as a woman. So if you want to be a mom and you want to have 8 children and you want to get that medal of motherhood, more power to you, truly. I don't want to do that. If you want to do that, that's what America's all about, baby. That NatalCon got a disproportionate amount of media attention this year was also perhaps inevitable. Since the election, it's become MAGA-coded, partly thanks to President Trump's special advisor, father of at least 14. Can you imagine? Father of at least, you don't even know, Elon Musk. He has frequently and recently, and as recently as this past Tuesday, voiced the opinion that low birth rates will end civilization. Natalism has also been on the mind of Vice President J.D. Vance. In January, he declared, "I want more babies in America," at the annual March for Life rally. This didn't go down well with the left, though his boss has moderated the Republican Party's stance on abortion. Pro-choice Democrats still interpreted this as Vance drawing a direct link between encouraging women to have babies and eroding their reproductive freedom. It's not surprising, therefore, that NatalCon has been viewed by liberal media outlets as a far-right cesspool. The headline, New York Magazine, but I disagree with that. Like, to me, this doesn't come off as like anti-choice because the people who would be willing to have an abortion to begin with wouldn't be the type of people who would go to NatalCon. So this is 2 different things we're talking about. And while we know, J.D. Vance to be anti-choice, anti-abortion, this is not, like, that's not the conversation that we're having now. I don't think those 2 things are really, like, crossing over a ton. The headline New York Magazine gave to their report on the 2025 conference this week effectively summed up the left's stance. Pro-natalism isn't a solution, it's a problem. As I scrolled through the NatalCon program, I spotted another issue for the ideology's branding. Most of the speakers, about 3/4, were men. That's a problem. Sitting down for dinner, I noticed the ratio was roughly the same for attendees. See, Mike?
All right.
When I asked Dolan about this, I really want to go to stuff like this. When I asked Dolan,
$1,000. That's a crazy amount of money to spend on a ticket.
I mean, like, conventions are expensive. I don't think it's that crazy of a price point, actually, depending on like what level of speaker is there and how long it is and like what the accommodations are like. When I asked Dolan about this, he told me that how much is like, I know Comic-Con is like not a great comparison, but like that's $200, right? When I asked Dolan about this, he told me that 6 female speakers had to drop out for pregnancy-related reasons. He also stated that conferences are virtually always overwhelmingly male. Like conferences or conventions? Like, what are they talking about? Because I'm a big convention girly. But reaching women is important, Dolan said. Obviously, they're half the equation. And also, like, if you're the kind of woman who would go to NatalCon, you might not have the availability to go to NatalCon because you probably have kids. That's why he said his speech this year is aimed to say, hey, actually, it's not this get back in the kitchen message. It's about we don't have any terms on which to build families. As someone who is pregnant with her first child and moving an hour's commute from the Manhattan office so my husband and I have more space for our baby, I can see Dolan's point. It's not partisan to note that anyone hoping to have kids in modern America tends to be daunted by the logistical and financial challenges they will face. But if NatalCon's aim was to save natalism from the culture war, it didn't get off to a good start. That first night, as attendees tucked into chicken and mashed potatoes, right-wing provocateur Jack Posobiec took to the podium to deliver the opening remarks.
Yuck.
What?
I hate Jack Posobiec.
Oh, Posobiec. Who? Wait. Oh, wait. I think we've talked about him before. I don't know these right-wing influencer the way. Oh, okay. I know his face. He's a senior editor, Human Events. Can you give me like a little summary of like what his shtick is?
I mean, from my recollection, he continually, like, what I see of the guy is like a lot of race baiting stuff that he'll post.
Don't love that.
A lot of retweeting Mike Cernovich.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan.
Okay, it's Posobiec, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so he said, Jack Posobiec goes on to say, our enemies want us dead. He said slowly and sternly, so take them seriously. The enemies, he clarified, are the Luigis, the Tesla terrorists, the woke, the globalists, the nihilists. The speech ascended into a full-throated call to arms. This is the war for civilization, he said. Every cradle is a victory. God, I would have loved to be there. There was a smattering of applause as that's not good, as he stepped off the stage. But the woman sitting next to me seemed unimpressed. She introduced herself as Emma Breezius, 37, from Dallas, and told me she has been the full-time mom of 5 young children, including triplets, for the past 9 years. With her youngest approaching school age, she's eager to drive back into work, and told me she's at NatalCon to meet women who are interested in launching entrepreneurial ventures. She wasn't impressed by the war talk. For her, natalism means helping would-be mothers, not haranguing them. Many young women are postponing or opting out of motherhood because they feel that they've sacrificed so much already for this career they've built or this life they've created, and they've been given the message, you'll throw it all away if you have a child, said Breezius. I think we should just build a society that doesn't make women have to choose so much. And I mean, I think the main thing we're missing there is a lot of women don't feel like they're going to only have to do 50%. They feel like they're going to have to do 60, 70, or 80% of the work. That's the real conversation, like, for me. I've literally like dated people who I've kind of been like, I don't want kids, but if that for you is a deal breaker and like we decide that like we love each other so much, if you're willing to do 60, I'll do 40. And knowing that I will be the breadwinner, knowing that I already have the financial backing to do this. And these are all people who haven't had that. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I go, so you do know how we feel. Because that's what you've been expecting of us all this time. And 60 is being fucking generous. It's more like 70.
That's a wild thing to, like, I remember when Alex was super pregnant and she would look at me crying, like, you're going to help me with this baby, right?
Yeah.
And me being like, it's an option not to? I don't understand that.
It has been for years, and many of us grew up in households where like our mom was just doing so much more of the work, and not that our dads weren't doing anything, but like that's just like the conversation, and or that's what we're used to, and societally that's what we're used to. I mean, I was even walking through my neighborhood the other day, and there's full ads that are basically about being a dad. You would never see an ad that has to convince a mom to show up as a mom. You regularly see ads that are like, that's like a little kid on a dad's shoulders that's like, look, being a dad can be fun. You should fucking do it. It made me laugh. It made me laugh if it didn't want to make me cry, because I'm like, you would just never fucking see that for moms. The next morning, I headed to Austin's AT&T Conference Center, where the second day of NatalCon was held. There, I met Catherine Pakaluk, author of Hannah's Children, The Women Quietly Defying the Birth Dearth, and one of the handful of female speakers at this year's conference. Catherine identifies as a conservative, but with a caveat. She insisted I note that her political philosophy is aligned with classical liberal principles. Unlike a lot of the natalists I met, she frankly stated the obvious. Pregnancy and childbirth asymmetrically burdens women, she told me, physically, emotionally, mentally. Pakaluk was 23 years, and let me add something more. If you want women to have more babies, stop criticizing our bodies all the fucking time, because your body is going to change when you have a baby, unless you have a baby when you're fucking 16 years old. So if you have a baby after that, your body's going to change a little bit. Stop fucking being on us all the time to be skinny. Then people will have more babies. Just giving you options here. Again, I'm helping you with your thesis that I don't even care about. Or your goal. Let's see. Pakaluk was 23 years old and had just gotten into Harvard when she married a widower with 7 children and fell in love with motherhood. She proceeded to have 8 children of her own, which put enormous pressure on her studies. Even as a student with maximum flexibility, she said, there were times where I thought, this is ridiculous. I should throw in the towel. But partly thanks to her supportive husband, she eventually graduated with a PhD in economics. She got her first full-time job when she was 40, shortly before her last baby was born. Natalists, she said, need to acknowledge that when Americans are urged to have more babies, you are definitely asking women to spend a little bit less time doing the thing that they are trained to do, feel quite good at, maybe feel deeply fulfilled doing. This is why so many feminists object to natalist messaging. And yet, Catherine also believes that a lot of mothers experience a shift in priorities after giving birth. You have to go through this thing where you attach to your baby and then you're separate from your baby. I don't think people want to do that lots of times, she said. She strongly disapproves of the narrative peddled by some natalists that deep down every woman would be happier if she just stayed at home with the kids. I mean, yeah, that's 100% not true. Like, just like go on Instagram or like Twitter for a second or like research postpartum depression. It's much more complicated than that, she said. Yet Catherine is skeptical that policies aimed at expanding maternity leave or making childcare more affordable would make much difference because they won't change the fact that many women experience motherhood as a constant pull in 2 different directions. I'm telling you, the number one thing to improve birth rate is for men to show up 50%. Her advice to women is change the way you think about work. Consider having children earlier and then throwing yourself into a career. Normalize going to law school in your 30s. It's a fair point, but I couldn't help but think not all of us meet a marriageable man in our early 30s. Here again, see, men want us to have babies so badly, but yeah, they're not showing up, and also we're so much more advanced than them in our 20s than they are in their 20s. And this is not like fuck you men, but it's like if you want these things, you also have to step up. I didn't meet my husband until I was 27, and that is young. And some struggle to get or stay pregnant. The fact is that motherhood, to a certain extent, is beyond our control. The rest of my day at NatalCon was, frankly, hard to pin down. I listened as speakers covered everything from the merits of arranged marriages, the fact that Mongolia gives medals to mothers, to raw dogging your way to a big family. Wow. Defined as leaning into the zesty, natural process of meeting and mating and making babies. Please stop. It's not ranch dressing. Please stop describing it as zesty. By foregoing dating
Also,
apps.
that's not what zesty means.
What do you mean?
Zesty in like the common colloquial for like the way the youngins talk about it, it means you're a little fruity.
But you're using it like Urban Dictionary.
Yeah, I mean the
Zesty means like spicy, flavorful.
all right. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're gonna go that route, use a different adjective because it has been co-opted by the youngins, and that's who you're trying to hit with this article.
Okay, well. Send a letter to the editor, Michael. By foregoing dating apps, contraception, and reproductive technologies, and the masturbation habits of chimps. Many of the offerings were, in the words of one attendee, totally incoherent. The most sensible talk was by Jonathan Keeperman, a conservative internet personality and publisher who called for NatalCon to be disbanded as soon as possible since having babies is one of our most basic biological functions. It is not, and should never be, a political issue, he argued, because it means that having children or not having children becomes instrumentalized towards some other goal. And what goal is that exactly? Keeping Social Security solvent to outbreed the libs? This is insane.
Woo!
Was the view, what was that woo?
No, I mean, finally someone who's making some common sense in this goddamn convention.
Yeah.
Spent $1,000 for one person to say, this is dumb.
Yeah, I
Knock
agree.
it off.
I agree. In his view, we need to embrace parenthood.
You know how many diapers you could buy with $1,000?
I don't, but I have an idea. In his view, we need to embrace parenthood as an end unto itself for reasons that are pre-political and even pre-social, as something awe-inspiring and life-affirming. Yeah, and like that's a conversation that we've had many times, mostly on Guys We Fucked, but it's just like, yeah, you know, people say, oh, you'll miss so much if you don't have children. I don't doubt it. I'll also miss so much if I do have children. It's one or the other. Like you're just making a choice here, and everyone is allowed to make that choice. Parenting was certainly treated With reverence at NatalCon, speakers frequently referenced their large families or pregnancies, eliciting loud cheers from the audience. While mingling, attendees were noticeably disinhibited when commenting on my bump, often offering hearty congratulations, which I found touching. It was less endearing when, at one point, a white-haired man put his hands uninvited on my baby bump. Ugh, that alone is enough to make me not want to have a baby, because I know people would be touching my bump and it would drive me nuts. Yuck. You don't look 6 months, he said with a wide grin, looking me up and down. My wife is also tall. She didn't really pop until number 5. Yuck. This is totally a kink for some men. Apart from this slightly disturbing interaction, I didn't hear anything particularly hair-raising. Certainly nothing that justified the protesters' opinion that this was a conference of Nazis. In fact, I bumped into one of the men that the mask-sporting students had named, and I asked which speakers they thought was a bigot. Razib Khan, a Bangladeshi-American science writer, laughed when I told him about this characterization, noting that it ought to be self-evident that he's not a white supremacist, given that he's not white. I have to argue, though, there are some not white supremacists, which I also find confusing, but here we are. I had, in fact, pointed out to Papri, the organizer of the protests, that a significant minority of NatalCon attendees were Asian, Black, and Jewish, to which he had replied somewhat dismissively that supremacist ideology can transcend any sort of race. I'm going to have to go with the protester on that one. I do agree. Khan, on the other hand, agreed that even if there are white supremacists who claim to be natalists, the vast majority of natalists, himself included, are not worried about the white race. They're worried about the human race. It's not discriminatory to want humanity to continue, nor is it fundamentally right-wing. On Saturday evening, as I sat on the floor of the conference center charging my phone, a middle-aged man in a backpack approached me and asked if I was a reporter. When I said yes, he introduced himself as Paul Constance, 59, a policy consultant and father of 5 based in Virginia. I'm a progressive, he told me. He was at the conference to learn more about the right's approach to natalism because he's worried that his political tribe has no positive story to tell on things like family formation and childbearing. Natalism gets prickly on the left, Constance said, because reproductive rights are under assault in this country, but he's disturbed by what he described as the left's real hostility at times towards those who choose to have children. He cited the disparaging way leftists sometimes refer to parents as breeders online. But again, this is extreme left. I'm a pretty liberal person, and all of my friends have kids and or are planning to. It's just not the people I know who you're talking about. These are people who we also don't like. These are extreme leftist people who are nuts. I thought of his point when 2 weeks ago, progressive pop icon Chappell Roan, 27, said on the Call Her Daddy podcast, which has nearly 5 million followers, 70% of whom are female, that she doesn't know anyone who's happy and has children at this age. Well, 27 is rather young to have kids. And also, please keep in mind that Chappell Roan is queer, and it's much different. And sometimes the queer community will refer to heterosexuals as breeders too. So I think there's a lot of variables going on here that we're not necessarily speaking to. Because, Chappell Roan, part of her messaging is just hey, I grew up and I never really saw anyone who was queer who reflected me. And that's kind of her whole thing. So you also have to keep that in mind, and that's really important. Constance believes
she is also, to be fair, she's from Tennessee or Missouri.
She's a Midwest princess.
Midwest princess, right?
Yeah.
So it's that is the kind of place where a lot of people are marrying their high school sweethearts and are having 2 or 3 kids by 23, 25, 27.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I'm sure they are overwhelmed by that.
And I'm sure
Can you imagine having to deal with a fucking the father of your kid being a 23-year-old guy? Stop. That's terrible. Constance believes that the smart progressive response would be to make reproductive rights a more inclusive movement, one that defends both the choice not to have kids and the choice to have as many as you want. And though he described the speakers at NatalCon as a weird mix and wasn't a fan of the strident nationalist death of civilization messaging, he still admired some of the speakers. He was struck by the fact that they spoke about having kids in terms of love, connection, caring. And that's great. We do need really good parents. We need people committed to being parents. Most of the people I know who suck, I can't even completely blame it on them. It's they had terrible parenting, okay? So I get that, right? I get that. It's very important to have good parents, and that's why it's such a serious conversation to have whether you want kids or not, because it is such a commitment, because you really are going to have such a big impact on society at large. This is why most people have them, and at the end of the day, they're not to save America. Speaking of love and connection, that's why a lot of NatalCon attendees were seeking. It was 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. The conference was over, and I was at a nearby event space on San Antonio Street for the party. There were around 60 people in the room, most of them men. The ripped tech bros were sipping beers. The nerds and tradcaths, I don't even know what a tradcath is. Tradcaths? Oh, God. Sorry. I got to look this up. Tradcaths.
I think it's traditional Catholicism.
Yes, traditional. Oh, God, I can't believe I didn't know this. Traditional Catholicism. You are right. We're debating data and doctrine. One young man in a vest and bow tie complained that the attendees were mostly single men and married women. I don't think, like, if you're looking for a singles, like, mixer for women, I don't think NatalCon is probably the place. The truth is a lot of people came to NatalCon.
Yeah, but the single women that are there, they are looking to leave the weekend pregnant.
Okay. The truth is a lot of people came to NatalCon.
It's like Jay and Silent Bob looking to pick up chicks outside the abortion clinic in Dogma.
Oh, my God. The truth is a lot of people came to NatalCon looking for a date. Around a third of the attendees were single. Well, here's good information for any single listeners who want to have children. Judging by the yellow wristbands they were encouraged to wear to identify themselves to one another. Okay, so that's weird. They're making it into a singles mixer now, for real.
Yeah, and they're just having the people with 5 kids just going kiss to them at all times.
Well, they shouldn't be drinking alcohol then. That's bad for your sperm count. Dolan, the conference organizer, told me that at least 3 couples met at last year's NatalCon. Because remember, infertility is often blamed on women, but it's about 50-50 sperm versus eggs.
Did you see the sperm race?
I'm sorry, what?
There are dudes online who
God.
This is from different universities. Okay. The athletes from universities gave samples of their sperm.
Of course they did.
This
is why we don't want to breed with you. Just so everyone's clear.
It was like a giant outdoor sporting event. But the thing was to raise awareness for the fact that men's motility is significantly down.
Okay. Well, you know what? Whatever's going to make men pay attention, and sometimes a sperm race is what's going to make men pay attention. Okay. Anyway, Dolan, the conference organizer, told me that at least 3 couples met at last year's NatalCon. He's not sure if they're still together. This year, in the hope of upping the number of matches, singles were invited to fill out a spreadsheet before the event, indicating their desired number of children from 1 to 7+, perhaps as Lyman Stone, a researcher with the Institute of Family Studies, told me earlier. The bigger driver of the fertility slump is really the decline in marriage. I joined a huddle of 3 single women. 2 of them work for conservative organizations, another in cybersecurity. All are college educated. All would like to have children. They came to the conference curious to know more about the potential solutions to America's fertility crisis. But they also came in the hope of meeting an eligible man, though none took the event too seriously. They wanted to know how I'd met my husband. One told me that despite her being outnumbered, the conference had offered slim pickings in terms of finding a suitable mate. No shit. Another said that she went to a meet and greet on Thursday night, but soon after realized she was the only woman in the room. The third, who was in her early 20s, told me she was starting to feel anxious about not having met the right guy. I told her I'd felt like that until a few years ago when a guy I'd been chatting to at work asked me on a date. Less than 2 years later, I was married to him. She also said there was something off-putting about a few of the single men she'd been talking to. They want their wives to have degrees, but they don't want them to work, she said. I mean, what's the point of that? In the days after NatalCon, this debate has flared up. On April 3rd, the right-leaning media personality Megyn Kelly said on her podcast that it's hard to find a lot of young men who want to marry a working woman now. This is an actual problem that's coming up on the right. In response, Matt Walsh, the conservative conservative Daily Wire host, said this tension is inevitable. As conservatives, we have to decide whether we want to conserve the view of the sexes that was held by basically everyone in the world until the middle of the 20th century, or if we want to conserve feminism. We cannot conserve both. In other words, in certain corners of the right, it's a choice between childless cat ladies and trad wives. But the women I met at NatalCon don't see life in such binary terms. They want children, but they also want to use all their talents, pursue all their interests. They want husbands who will support both their maternal and professional ambitions. And they seemed frustrated that their desires are often painted as contradictory. That balance is presented as somehow out of reach. It seemed to me that most of the people at NatalCon simply want what most people have wanted for most of time, to fall in love and start a family. They may have seen me and my pregnancy as a symbol of hope, but I left the conference feeling as confused as they did about how to help women who want to have kids. Then, in the middle of our heart-to-heart, a man approached us wearing a cowboy hat. "How you ladies doing?" All three women turned to him smiling, their yellow wristbands on full display. I knew when to step out. All right, that is so interesting. Really liked that. Really liked that, like, kind of more centrist take on everything that's going on at NatalCon. Again, really want to go to NatalCon. If you know anyone who works at NatalCon and have an in for next year, please let me know. I would love a press pass. Really interested on making some NatalCon content. All right. Let's see where we are time-wise. Okay. So I want to talk about, I think, Elon Musk, perhaps. This is a long one about how everything went wrong. Maybe we talk about Marco Rubio first. This is from Fox News. Marco Rubio reveals obscure Biden administration office kept disinformation dossier on Trump official. Was it me or Elon? Vice President Vance asked Rubio during a cabinet meeting. And this is from Fox News. Secretary of State Marco Rubio revealed during a cabinet meeting that the Biden administration's State Department kept dossiers on Americans accused of serving as vectors of disinformation, including a file on an unidentified Trump administration official. We had an information in the Department of State whose job it was to censor Americans, Rubio said during Wednesday's cabinet meeting with President Donald Trump. And by the way, I'm not going to say who it is. I'll leave it up to them. There is at least one person at this table who had a dossier in that building of social media posts to identify them as purveyors of disinformation. We have these dossiers. We are going to be turning those over to these individuals. Vice President J.D. Vance interjected asking, was it me or Elon Musk? We can follow up when the media is gone, and drawing laughter from the cabinet. Yep, it's all a comedy show. But just think about that. The Department of State of the United States had set up an office to monitor the social media posts and commentary of American citizens to identify them as vectors of disinformation, Rubio continued, which is a crazy thing to say is problematic when they're doing the same thing. I mean, I know these are like to visa holders, but still, when we know the best way to combat disinformation is freedom of speech and transparency, we're not going to have an office that does that. Rubio appeared to be referring to an office within the State Department previously known as the Global Engagement Center, which he officially shuttered earlier this month. When announcing a massive reorganization of the State Department, the Global Engagement Center engaged with media outlets and platforms to censor speech it disagreed with, Rubio said. The center has been accused by conservatives of censoring them. Journalist Matt Taibbi, for example, previously reported that the center funded a secret list of subcontractors and helped pioneer an insidious and idiotic new form of blacklisting during the pandemic, Fox Digital reported in 2024. He added that the Global Engagement Center flagged accounts as Russian personas and proxies based on criteria like describing the coronavirus as an engineered bioweapon, blaming research conducted at the Wuhan Institute, and attributing the appearance of the virus to the CIA. Though Rubio did not identify which Trump official the Biden administration kept a dossier on, Elon Musk has previously railed against the Global Engagement Center. The worst offender in U.S. government and censorship in U.S. government censorship and media manipulation is an obscure agency called GEC, Musk posted to X in January 2023. And let's look up GEC agency. What is that? So its Global Engagement Center was an agency within the Bureau of Global Public Affairs at the United States Department of State. It was established in 2016. Its mission was to lead U.S. government efforts to recognize, understand, expose, and counter foreign state and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts aimed at undermining or influencing the policies, security, or stability of the United States, its allies, and partner nations around the world. GEC closed in December 2024 and was reorganized as the State Department's Counter Foreign Information and Manipulation and Interference Office. In April 2025, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced its closure, stating that the office had wasted taxpayer money and engaged in censorship. Back to the original article. That was more than a year before Musk endorsed Trump in the 2024 presidential race and became a fixture of the administration in his temporary role with the Department of Government Efficiency. They are a threat to our democracy, Musk added. Fox News Digital reached out to the White House for additional details on which Trump official was targeted, but did not immediately receive a reply. Former President Barack Obama established the small office in 2016 through an executive order aimed at coordinating counterterrorism messaging to foreign nations before it expanded its scope to also include countering foreign propaganda and disinformation, State Department documents show. In 2024, lawmakers did not approve new funding for the office in the National Defense Authorization Act, and it was scheduled to terminate on December 23, 2024. The Biden administration, however, shuffled staffers and rebranded the office. It became the Counter Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Hub in the waning days before Trump's inauguration, the New York Post reported in January. I am announcing the closure of the State Department's Counter Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference, formerly known as the Global Engagement Center, Rubio said in an April 16th statement announcing the office's closure. Under the previous administration, this office, which cost taxpayers more than $50 million per year, spent millions of dollars to actively silence and censor the voices of Americans they were supposed to be serving, he wrote. This is antithetical to the very principles we should be upholding, and inconceivable it was taking place in America. That ends today. Interesting. All right. And then let's see what last article we should do. I think we can close it up with this Washington Post piece about Elon Musk. This is Elon Musk had the government in his grasp, then it unraveled. The billionaire head of the U.S. Doge service clashed with Trump cabinet officials well before he announced he would soon head back to Tesla. Elon Musk had tried to go over the head of a cabinet secretary again. The billionaire leader of the U.S. Doge service helped install Gary Shapley, a mid-level IRS official, as the agency's acting commissioner last week, but the Internal Revenue Service falls under the purview of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who had repeatedly bristled at Doge's attempts to intervene at his agency. This time, the resulting tensions spilled out in a yelling match in the West Wing, where Musk and the nation's top financial official battled within earshot of President Donald Trump, said two people familiar with the heated confrontation, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe the sensitive situation. Bessent won, and Shapley was replaced after just 3 days as the IRS's acting head. Musk unfollowed Bessent on X, his social media platform. Asked about the clash, which was first reported by Axios, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt referred to a statement she issued last week. Disagreements are a normal part of any healthy policy process, the statement read, and ultimately, everyone knows they serve at the pleasure of President Trump. But the showdown was just Musk's latest confrontation with a top Trump appointee in a 3-month government stint that has been peppered with controversy. He has rebuked officials such as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Transportation Secretary Sean P. Duffy, and Economic Advisor Peter Navarro in meetings or on social media, calling them incompetent or suggesting that they have lied. He has also alienated Trump aides with unscripted remarks and abrupt edicts, forcing political appointees to scramble to explain his decisions. His group appeared to scale back its ambitions, with Musk saying that Doge was on track to cut $150 billion from government spending this year, far below his original goal. Musk's popularity also waned with voters. Polls show a majority of Americans hold an unfavorable view of him and say he has had too much sway in government operations. Fox News and other conservative outlets warned that the billionaire had become political baggage for the president, particularly after a Wisconsin Supreme Court race this month that Musk said was important for the future of civilization and drew his personal involvement. A liberal judge won. With the electric car company he runs, Tesla, battered by declining sales and falling share prices, Musk on Tuesday told investors that his time allocation to Doge will drop significantly starting next month, though he added he will probably stay involved. I'll have to continue doing it for probably the remainder of the president's term just to make sure that the waste and fraud that we have stopped does not come roaring back, he said. So I think I'll continue to spend, a day or two per week on government matters for as long as the president would like me to do so, as long as it is useful. The White House and a spokeswoman for Doge, which stands for Department of Government Efficiency, did not respond to questions about the timing of Musk's planned departure. He was a tremendous help, both in the campaign and in what he's done with Doge, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office on Wednesday. What he does is good, and we have to at some point let him go and do that, and we expected to be doing it about this time. Musk's plan to step back in May has been long reported and widely anticipated by Trump political officials, while the billionaire who put nearly $300 million towards seeing Trump and other Republicans elected last year has retained support from the president. The White House has sought for weeks to put guardrails around Musk and his team's activities. I like what Doge stands for. I don't like how they've done it, said one Trump appointee who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe candid frustrations with Musk's operation. The official compared Doge to overly aggressive chemotherapy, invoking a line attributed to Musk about one of his deputies, praising the team for combating the federal bureaucracy, but saying the unintended consequences have been deeply harmful. They got rid of the cancer and a lot of the healthy cells, too. The first sign of trouble for Musk came in early March, when Trump said cabinet secretaries, not Musk, were in charge of cutting employees and programs. Until then, Doge had embarked on an unprecedented sweep through government agencies with a seeming mandate from Trump to remold the federal workforce as it wished. Musk's team moved to dismantle targets such as USAID and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, overseeing steep job cuts and canceling spending to which it objected. The pace and scope of those initial actions led to a wave of public scrutiny and triggered lawsuits that put Musk in the spotlight. Doge pledged to cut wasteful federal spending, but often carried out its edicts with little warning to agency officials and outside organizations. For instance, an abrupt plan to cut billions of dollars in biomedical research funding for universities prompted lawsuits from affected organizations and resistance from GOP lawmakers. Courts swiftly blocked the move. Doge continued to slow walk billions of dollars in federal payments, though through efforts to take control of grants. Senior political advisors around the Trump administration had complained almost from the outset about Musk's unpredictable maneuvers. The billionaire clashed openly with cabinet officials at a meeting in early March. Shortly after that, Trump issued his strongest rebuke yet of his close ally. As the secretaries learn about and understand the people working for the various departments, they can be very precise as to who will remain and who will go, Trump said in a Truth Social post. We say the scalpel rather than the hatchet. From then on, it was clear that Musk would not spend Trump's full term in Washington. As a special government employee, the billionaire is limited to 130 days working for the administration this year. Otherwise, he would face the prospect of divesting and disclosing financial conflicts of interest. Despite that, that's interesting. Despite that, he had indicated he would stick with Doge for at least another year, focusing on areas such as Social Security spending. But Doge's disruption started to affect Musk's businesses too. Fierce protests and demonstrations against Tesla began gaining steam, sometimes erupting into vandalism. The company's stock, which is key to Musk's wealth, slid on the notion that Doge's unpopularity had damaged the electric vehicle's maker's brand. On Tuesday, Tesla reported a 71% plunge in profits and a 9% decline in revenue compared with the first quarter of 2024. Deliveries slipped 13% compared with last year, the largest drop in recent history, and the stock has fallen more than 30% since the beginning of the year. Share prices have risen the past few days, though, as investors cheered the idea that Musk might soon leave the White House. The EV manufacturer was already struggling with increased competition and global trade uncertainty, but experts and analysts have largely attributed its recent woes to Musk's political divisiveness. Musk began Tuesday's earnings call by lambasting anti-Tesla protesters and repeating baseless claims that they are funded by outside groups, the recipients of wasteful largesse. As Tesla's financial picture worsened this year, Musk started to sound a different tune about Doge, saying last month that most of the work to find a planned $1 trillion in savings would be complete by the time his 130-day tenure concluded. I mean, they are working fast. Steve K. Bannon, who served as Trump's chief strategist during his first term and has consistently clamored for Musk's departure, said there must be very specific accountability as to the fraud and waste that Doge allegedly found before the billionaire leaves government. It's imperative we find out what he found. He questioned the integrity of the entire system, and that's necessary. But Trump needs the specific details of what he found. We can't leave it hanging out there, Bannon said. We have to have a full accounting that makes sure any government data, classified or not, and any personal financial data, people's tax returns and their health records, have not gone to any entity not controlled by the Trump administration or the U.S. government. Musk did not respond to a request for comment. While his influence ebbed in the White House, Musk was pouring money and energy into a Wisconsin Supreme Court race he said might decide the future of America and Western civilization. But with Doge forcing cuts back in Washington, Democrats in Wisconsin took advantage of Musk's low approval ratings and used him as a villain to galvanize their base. The conservative judge Musk backed, Brad Schimmel, ultimately lost the race to his liberal challenger, Susan Crawford. The campaign gimmicks that helped Musk energize Trump supporters did not seem as effective as some professional Republicans began to see him as a political liability. Initially, Musk had a panache that was unique for the Republican Party, said Christopher Nicholas, a GOP strategist in Pennsylvania. But now he is a lightning rod. Even some Musk backers have acknowledged that his freewheeling style can cause complications. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, said on an episode of the All In podcast last month that he and Musk had a plan before taking the stage at a Trump campaign rally in October. Musk would announce a goal to slash the federal budget by $1 trillion. Then they walked out in front of a boisterous crowd, and Musk began to riff and wound up doubling the total. He says $2 trillion in cuts, Lutnick said on the podcast, and then I'm sitting there going, and I'm like, I think I said alrighty then or something like that. What was I supposed to say? By mid-April, Musk was significantly tempering expectations for Doge. Far from the planned $1 trillion to annual spending cuts, Musk said the group had identified $150 billion in savings for the 2026 fiscal year. By last week, his clash with Besant in the West Wing only brought limited shock in the White House, where the thought of senior officials yelling at each other in proximity to the president was still seen as a major violation of decorum. I mean, I think decorum went out the window when Trump got elected, but okay. Even in the boundary-breaking Trump administration. Several officials shrugged it off, saying they have grown used to Musk's antics. It's Elon being Elon, said a White House official. Oh, I love that, boys will be boys has now been upgraded to or downgraded to Elon will be Elon. All right. So that is our main show today. I also want to point you towards... you know what? That's not actually what I want to point you towards. Yeah, that's our show for today. If you want to email me, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Again, make sure to follow what's happening with me in this mayoral race at Corinne Fisher for mayor on Instagram. And then I'm also everywhere else at Philanthropy Gal. And again, if you know a journalist who is interested in covering like corruption and democracy or like municipal politics, I do think this is an interesting story that needs to be told. Again, not surprising, but angering nonetheless. Thank you so much for your support. You can learn more at CorinneFisher.com about all my policies. Hopefully next week I will come to you with good news, although I think my next hearing is going to be like Tuesday or Wednesday, so I don't know if I will even have an answer on you for you by then. It's been like a really weird couple of weeks where I'm just kind of like doing what I can, but also so much has been halted, and like I don't really like I want to be productive, but I don't exactly know what I can be doing. So it's been a weird time, but thank you so much for everyone who has been so supportive. And I hope that you at least find the transparency to be eye-opening and interesting. And I hope it makes you more motivated to do a little looking into what's going on wherever it is you live, because I think like being nosy and being loud about it are the first steps. And of course, making sure that you're voting in those municipal elections, as we've been talking about on here for years. If you want to subscribe to the Patreon, which is a great way to support me, if you are legally not allowed to donate to my campaign, you can go to patreon.com/withoutacountry. That money is going towards, the journalism we're doing on here, which, after the campaign, I do hope to expand larger. Also, if you know anything about like how to get a press pass, I can look this up on my own, but like I'm sure getting a press pass, as everything, is also a bit political. So if you have a way to streamline that process, or if you know the best way to go about it that has the highest rate of success, please email me withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. And of course, you can share anything else that you want to share with me there. And then on Sunday, we are still doing the benefit for Corinne Fisher for Mayor, which is a stand-up comedy and drag show featuring Christina Hutchinson, Emma Willman, Izzy Uncut, Jacqueline Hyde, and Vicky DeVille. It's going to be a super fun show. And we won't have had that next hearing by then. So, I think we're putting most of the money in the campaign fund. But anyway, just buy a ticket. It's $30. It's like the same price that it would be if it was not a campaign event. We made sure of that. And I'm splitting the money as I normally would with Emilio at New York Comedy Club, who has been really, really supportive of not just my comedy career, but also of my political career. So I really want to give him a shout out for that. One of the most the biggest supporters, not just, financially, but also in his, letting me use his space to petition, to do benefits, to, getting help, using his, he's, a guy who knows a lot of people. He's used so much of his press access to help me connect with reporters all over the city. So I just want to shout out New York Comedy Club. They've been very good to me. Always, but specifically during this process when it was gaining him nothing. Obviously, when he's good to me in comedy, he's getting something out of that, but he's not getting anything out of supporting me in this political journey. So please, if you're in New York City, make sure to buy a ticket to New York Comedy Club. They have 3 locations. They always have a stacked lineup: New York Comedy Club East Village, New York Comedy Club Upper West Side, and New York Comedy Club Gramercy. Again, I perform there regularly. Well, when I'm doing comedy, Christina performs there regularly. And there's like a lot of great comics, and the staff is like my family. So I just, Mike produces a show there with Justin Silver. Just make sure that people often say, where should I go to see a comedy show if you're coming to New York City? Obviously, the Cellar is legendary. But when I tell you that I do think New York Comedy Club has an incredible lineup pretty much every night, and the spaces are great, and the staff is incredible. Like, I really do mean that. I'm not just saying that. So shout out to them for everything. But again, Sunday, the show is actually at 8 p.m. It said 7 p.m. There was like a miscommunication. It's a 90-minute show, though. I won't keep you out too late. It's Sunday, this Sunday, May 4th, 8 p.m., New York Comedy Club, East Village. Again, it's a $30 ticket. Just make the contribution. I might switch the link and give and make it easier to streamline it, because there's something about the contribute form that makes people like weird about buying tickets because they think it's like some big political contribution, which it is. But that being said, it's like so much bang for your buck. Such a great show. If you're in New York City, I highly recommend coming. It'll be very little politics. It's mostly just drag and stand-up comedy. So please come out to that, because it doesn't really matter whether or not the whether or not the campaign moves forward. The show still goes toward what the show needs to go towards. And Michael, do you have anything that you need to promote?
Yeah, this weekend we are at Fifth Company Brewing. Had a bit of a change. Greg Stone can't make it. He has a family emergency, unfortunately. But Dave Temple's filling in. Dave Temple, Ryan Shaner.
Also very funny.
Naeem Ali. Going to be a very, very good show. Yeah, come on by. Fifth Company Brewing. Get tickets at fifthcompanybrewing.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for supporting the show. If you're not watching this on YouTube, make sure to go over to YouTube and click subscribe on Without a Country. It just helps visibility of the show. And thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thanks, bitch. Have a great day.
Keep looking for the truth, seeking the truth, and fighting corruption wherever you see it. I love you so much. Bye.